Hello there, it's Charlotte Hawkins and welcome to our podcast Leaps and Hounds, run in conjunction with the Dogs Trust. We're on episode 2. I am here with Eloise from the Animal Behaviour team at the Dogs Trust. Welcome back, Eloise.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. Now, we've talked a bit about the dog that you choose to get, settling them into the new home. Now we're going to have a look at sleeping through the night and the early toilet training routine, because we found with Moose, that was one of the things that I think I was really worried about was, is he going to sleep through the night? How do we manage that? Is he going to wee everywhere? Is he going to poo everywhere? And I think for a lot of people, those are kind of really key issues when you first welcome a dog into your home, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things we do need to take our time with to make sure they get it right. And it's not always easy. How did you find it with Moose in those sort of early days?
So I sought a bit of advice because I was worried about, he's in the crate and he's quite happy in the crate. But overnight, I just thought, well, what's going to happen if he needs the loo in the middle of the night? Because I didn't want him to be upset. Our rule is that the dog has to stay downstairs, doesn't come upstairs. So I didn't want to leave him. So I was advised that, yes, be down here with him. So we actually slept on the lounge floor for the first few nights with Moose, which I know seems a bit extreme. But, actually it just made sure that if he did wake up in the night, we just took him out. He had a wee and then put him back. But I was then worried that he'd think, oh, great, I've just got to cry. And then they come and let me out. So again, it's sort of making sure that you have that clear messaging, because then I was thinking, right, I'm just not going to make it fun for him. It's very, all we're doing is, we're just taking you outside to go to the loo, putting you back in the crate, and then everyone's going back to sleep. And that seemed to work. So is that what you'd recommend as a technique? What are your top tips for basically making sure they sleep through the night, but also, they can go to the loo if they need to?
Yeah, exactly that. So it's going to be down to personal preference on where you want your puppy to sleep. For a lot of people, it is going to be that they're sleeping downstairs sort of independently. But again, in those first few days, this is going to probably be the first time your puppy has ever slept away from their mum or their litter mates. So it's quite scary. Oh. So in those first couple of days, I do sort of say, let's not worry too much about the routine. Let's make sure they feel safe and secure. So that will probably mean you need to sleep next to them. And you could do that one of two ways. You can either have them in their own bed in your bedroom next to you, or you will have to make a makeshift bed and sleep downstairs.
Sleep on the lounge floor.
Exactly. So that's exactly what we would recommend. And like you said as well, they'll need to go to the toilet. Their bladders and bowels, they're not fully formed yet in terms of the muscles. So when they wake up, we do need to take them out. But like you said, it's not a fun experience. We're not then up and ready to party. It's literally out for your business, back to bed.
Yeah, and that would be my recommendation, is just keep it really functional, because also, when I do Good Morning Britain, I have to get up really early in the morning. And I was thinking, well, if I'm getting up at 2:30 and then he thinks, oh, great, we're awake now, it's time to play. I needed to be able to sort of put him back to bed. And I think that was one of the key things for us, was making sure that we could still put him back to bed and he wouldn't expect it to be either playtime or feed time. And sometimes it's just extending that amount of time that they're happy to be on their own, isn't it? So that you can think, okay, I can leave him for a little bit longer. So we worked out, those first few nights were a bit crazy when we were camping out on the lounge floor. But then he would sleep longer and longer amounts of time. So then we moved and we were then on the sofa bed a little bit further away. So we put a bit of distance and just kind of built that up over time. And sometimes it is just that gradual process, isn't it? Yeah. To get them to that end result. You can't expect them to sleep through the night day one.
Exactly that. We need to break it down into such tiny steps to make it as easy for them as possible. And some puppies are going to be easier than others. Some it might take a little bit more time. So there are little tips. Like if they are sleeping in a crate, we could maybe introduce a blanket over the crate. So you're still in the room with them, but they can't see you. They know you're there. They can hear you. They can smell you. But we've just sort of worked on that visual sort of barrier. And like you said, we then want to wean ourselves away from them. So again, they're still going to be able to smell us, hear us. They know where we are, but we're just going to gradually sort of move ourselves out of sight. If they do regress, maybe we've just gone too quick and we need to take it back a step.
Yeah.
It's completely down to the puppy, you know, how quick or slow this process will go, unfortunately, but you do just have to stay consistent with it.
Yeah, and actually that blanket over the crate is a good sort of signal to them as well, isn't it? And we found, you know, to begin with, we'd take him out to the loo quite late at night and then just sort of try and leave it for as long as possible before then kind of taking him out in the morning. So at least he's getting used to the fact that, okay, I go to the loo last thing at night and then there's a few hours where I'm asleep and then I go first thing in the morning. So again, it's like working out your schedules. It's a bit like when you have a new baby and you're trying to work out, you know, when you've got to change their nappy, when you've got to feed them. It's kind of a similar thing with the dog.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing as well with puppies waking up in the night, sometimes it's not actually that they've woken up because they need to go to the toilet. It might be that beep on the oven has just woken them up, or, you know, that sound outside the house. So when we are sort of looking to set our puppy up to independently sleep, choosing the location is quite important. We do want to make sure it's in an area where there's not a lot of sort of noises that are going to disturb them, because then once they are awake, that will trigger then, oh, I need to go to the toilet now.
Yeah.
And for anyone, again, who is finding this phase particularly difficult, sometimes introducing like a white noise machine or just having some really low level sort of audio that's again going to be nice and calming, but also drown out some of those external household noises that might be waking them up.
Good to know. And do you have any tips? I mean, he was always quite good actually if a dog is crying, because with him he would sort of make a noise if he needed to go to the loo. And then because I just sort of put him back, I would give him a treat and kind of go settle down and that's it. It was fine. So in the mornings, he never kind of cried or woke us up or anything in the mornings, because I'd always go down quite early, maybe about like 6 o'clock or something, take him out to the loo and then put him back into his bed before then giving him his breakfast a bit later on. But I know for some people, their dog will kind of cry and wake them up at 5 in the morning, which, you know, or whatever time in the morning.
Yeah, and, you know, I think Moose has been so good, and it's probably down to your consistency and structure with that, because that's the thing. If people have sometimes gotten up and thought, oh, well, I'm up now, I'm just going to stay up with you. You know, your puppy has done, oh, okay, we wake up in the morning and we're out now. So you do have to be consistent, you know, with your morning routines and sort of popping them back in there. Like you said, with a treat, something to entertain themselves with if you are going back to bed. And with the kind of, I would never recommend sort of letting your puppy sort of cry it out in distress or anything. If they are getting distressed, we do need to go and sort of tend to them. But there is a difference between a little bit of whining, a little bit of whinging, and giving them a second to go, can you self-soothe? Are you okay? Can you figure it out for a second? If it's sort of becoming more intense, if it's going on for prolonged periods, absolutely not. We would want to go and sort of tend to them. But sometimes they have a little whinge and go, okay, I'm just going to go back to bed then. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
We have to be careful with that.
Well, I found, you know, if you've sort of ruled out all the stuff that it might need, you know, toilet, a drink of water or whatever else, then you kind of think, well, I know you're okay. Because I always think the danger is that if they learn that when they cry, you come to them and you give them something or you give them loads of attention, then they're like, oh, great, well, all I've got to do is cry. And then, you know, like that, they're there. Then there's a danger of that in itself. Listen, we must talk about the toilet training situation, because I know that's a really key one for a lot of people. And it was the one that I was really worried about, because, you know, having a new puppy, and I just thought he's going to wee and poo everywhere. This is going to be absolutely crazy. I bought hundreds of those puppy pads thinking I'm going to need them. He didn't use a single one of the puppy pads. He just chewed them up. So actually for us, that didn't work at all. For me, what worked was I just kept taking him outside so frequently, and I have a code word for wee and a code word for poo. So every time he did it outside, I would say the code word, I'd say good boy, and just sort of, I think he only had like a handful of accidents in here, and usually that was if we'd left it a bit long or something, you know, and now he will sit by the door if he needs to go out. I haven't quite got to the stage where I think you can get like doggy doorbells and bells and all sorts of things if you get to the next level of training where they can do that. But for me, it was just sort of the frequency that worked. But, you know, you have to be there, don't you, in order to be able to reinforce that to the dog.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a few top tips that I recommend with sort of toilet training a puppy, a few sort of rules to sort of follow. So first one is obviously making sure that we're watching them for when they need to go. And that can be difficult, but if we're watching our puppy any kind of signal such as them sniffing the floor, sneaking off, that would be a bit
or
of an
circling around,
circling around. But as a rule of thumb, anytime they've woken up from a nap, anytime they've just had a drink or something to eat, anytime there's been a fun or exciting event, like they've just been playing with their toys or someone's just come home from work or school, that kind of thing. And then the last one is if it's been longer than 2 hours and there's been no accidents. That would be my cue then to take them outside. We do want to remain quite boring because quite often they'll go outside, get so distracted by the environment and almost forget that they need to go. We bring them back in and then an accident happens. So we want to remain quite boring, encourage sniffing and sort of exploratory behaviours. Hopefully that would trigger them to go. When they do go and get it right, obviously we want to reward, like you said, lots of verbal praise. We might even want to give them a treat. One thing I do find, because some people do struggle a little bit more with this, sometimes keeping a diary can help.
Yes, we've done that. So we have a feeding chart and a poo chart. And I think actually that does really help because you kind of know, like when he was really little, he did 5 poos a day. So you'd know, oh, okay, he's due a poo around now. So actually just getting to know their routine really helped.
Yeah, it can really narrow down those times because they are pretty routined. And I have seen cases where people want to get it right and they try so hard that they're taking their puppy out every half an hour.
Yeah.
And they don't need to go. So, you know, going outside isn't being associated with, okay, I need a toilet break. It's cool, we're going outside again. What should we do now?
Yeah.
And that association just isn't being formed. So having a diary and going, right, they don't typically go at this time of day. I'm not going to bother taking them outside because we risk sort of losing that association. So it can just help keep things a little bit more structured, I find.
And in case people think I'm nuts for having a code word for wee and poo, so in case you want to know, it's whiz whiz and be quick. If you ever hear me shouting that in the park, and I'm whispering it slightly because Moose isn't too far away and I don't want him to think that I'm giving him the instructions right now to do that. But the reason I thought it was useful, again, if things like you're going on a car journey and you want them to do a wee or you want to see if they need to go to the loo beforehand, I found it's really helped. And another thing I would say is that it's really tempting, isn't it, if they've done a wee or a poo in the house and you're a bit cross about it, but you can't kind of shout at them or tell them off. It's about sort of, okay, you know, I'll take you straight out now because this is where I want you to go to the loo. But you've got to be a bit patient with it, haven't you?
You do, yes. I mean, code words I think are brilliant. Usually we kind of wait until they're performing that behaviour, then pair that word with it.
Yes.
So, they start to catch on what that means.
So while they're doing it, you're saying good boy. So then they're like, oh, great, okay, I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm supposed to be doing it and when.
Yeah, exactly that. And then in terms of, it can be really frustrating with those accidents, especially if you've just spent half an hour outside and then you come in. But, it's not disobedience. They just haven't sort of learned where they need to go yet. So it's not them sort of being defiant or being naughty. It happens. We do need to remain patient and we want to remain completely neutral, clean it up as thoroughly as we can, and then continue and just making sure we are reinforcing that behaviour when they do get it right.
Another thing also I need to mention are those little excitable wees, is it? You know, the ones that they've been outside, they've had a wee, but maybe you've got guests coming over and we've had this, and actually it's quite embarrassing because my husband's lost quite a few pairs of socks now because guests will come over and for some reason Moose will just do like a teeny like excitable wee, but it will usually be like on someone's foot or near someone's foot. Is there anything you can do, or is that just a puppy phase thing that is going to happen until they've got a bit more control?
It depends on the puppy. Not all of them do it. But again, it's about that sort of weakness around their bladder at this age. The muscles just aren't fully formed yet. So when they do get excited, it can just trigger a little excitable wee. We could maybe take them outside for greetings. That's the only way I can sort of say. But it is something that should naturally sort of wither away as they sort of mature.
Fingers crossed, let's hope so, because I think my husband's going to run out of socks otherwise. Eloise, thank you very much. So just to sort of give you a summary then of what this episode has been about, it's, encouraging those sort of behaviours about getting them to sleep through the night, the best ways to help that, especially if you're sort of crate trainee, you can put a blanket over the top. Try to sort of, judge when you're taking them out to go to the toilet last thing at night and build up that time really where you can leave them overnight. But bear in mind that especially if you get a puppy, those first few nights, it is a good idea to be there with them so you can just keep an eye on everything. And then when it comes to toilet training, patience is key. I found that those code words are good, and making sure that you're taking them outside and then really reinforcing the good behaviour when they're going to the loo, where and when you want them to, and also just being patient when things don't quite go well, and having lots of kitchen roll and disinfectant to hand for those times as well. Eloise, thank you so much. That's all been brilliant, and thank you as well to you for watching and listening, and we'll see you again soon for more Leaps and Hounds.